Hi everybody, this is Pixie Glore and I am going to show you some creative watercolor techniques. This is Watercolor 3 and today we're going to have a lot of fun. So what I want you to do is while I show you each of these techniques, I want you to pause the video and then practice it yourself. Turn the video back on, watch the next one, pause it, and so on and so forth. And I will remind you to do that, at least most of the time. But you're going to have a lot of fun with this, and these are techniques that you can use later on in watercolors and in landscapes, portraits, anything you do. There's all kinds of wonderful fun things to do. This is what makes it such a wonderful medium. And by the way, if you have kids, you can just let them go and they start playing, and you will be surprised at what they end up doing. So that's it. Let's get started. Hi there. Okay, here we have a list of a lot of different kinds of techniques that you can do in creative watercolor. And I'm going to be going over these one by one. Believe me, it is not limited to this. There's endless choices that we can do with this. I'm always learning new ones. And this is a piece of paper that I did all the different techniques on, and we're going to be going with these one by one. And each one I'm going to do, I want you to watch me do it, pause the video, and then you do it. And we'll just go right along and do every one of these techniques, so then you have them and you'll know what they're called. And you can come back here and look close and write down underneath them. I like to write underneath them what they are so that you have them for later. And the type of paper I'm using is that Ganson watercolor block. I showed you this in the earlier video. This is great for getting started. It's a nice white paper, and I'm using the little bit bigger sheet. And if you only have the little one, just do several sheets. You can also use both sides. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. Okay. So as you can see, I have taped my watercolor paper down, which you will be seeing that I do that a lot. And I'm going to get some water, and I'm going to start out here with ultramarine blue. And the first thing we're going to do is just a flat wash. It's just putting color on. And right here, as I do this, I want to start out right now with watercolor. One of the things you don't want to do is you don't want to scrub watercolor like that. Okay, let's see if you can see that. You can't see that. Get this down. You don't want to scrub watercolor like that, like you do with oils and acrylics. You want to just lay it down nice and flat and not go over it too much. So I've got a tilt. My board is slightly tilted, and I just grab the bottom bead and go across. And that is, I'm going to do one more. I like kind of rectangles. So that is called a flat wash. And that's pretty much all it is to it. And this is ultramarine blue that I'm using. You can use any color you want because you will be doing flat washes with different colors. But I like to use this so you can kind of start to see that right off, because eventually we'll be using that or cobalt blue for our skies. Okay, then the next one that we're going to do, so pause the video and practice that. Now what we're going to do is layering. So layering is you just take and do a flat wash. And notice how much lighter this is than the other one. That's because I had more water in the paint. So with watercolor, we don't use white. We use the brightness of the paper for our white. I like to keep a hair dryer handy for when I'm impatient. Okay, so I've got that dry, and now layering is just simply with a dry brush. You have a wash, and you come back, and you can use the same color, and you go over the top. Okay, rinse that out, get a different color. And layering works best if you use transparent colors. So you'll hear me talk a lot about opaque or granulating colors and transparent colors. Transparent colors are just that. They're transparent and you can see through them. And I think I mentioned in the last video, our main transparent colors are Viridian, Permanent Rose, and Cobalt Blue. Yellow really isn't very transparent, but you can still layer with it. It just goes quite different. So there is some layering, all right? And you can just try whatever colors you want. Now, I didn't mean to hit the edge of that, but when you do that, that's pretty cool. Okay, then now pause the video and try that. All right, wasn't that fun? Okay, next one here is gradations. And gradations you do a lot. And if you worked on the computer at all, you'll know that they have little buttons where you can say, put in a gradation. So a gradation is where you start with nice dark paint. So by dark paint, I'm going to show you this. I mean kind of pasty. So it gets kind of pasty when it's really dark, and then as you add water, it's more and more water. It's lighter. And you will get a feel for that as you move along. Because people often start out, and right off the bat, most people use too much water. So I'm going to take and wash my brush out and add more water. Okay, wash it out, more water, until I get to the bottom where it's just clear water. Okay, so that's a gradation where it goes from dark to light. Okay, so pause that and try it out. Now the next one, what I like to do is two color gradations, and there's two ways of doing that. One is you slowly take a color and then you start adding, I'm going to do blue and green, okay? You start adding a little more green, rinse out your brush, get a little more green, until the last stroke is pure green, okay? And that's just simply called a two-color gradation, right? So try that one out. And you can use whatever colors you want. All right, the next thing I'm going to do is called color changes. Is what I call color changes. And this is the way I paint a lot. And I do color changes regardless of what medium I'm in. So it makes it a lot more dynamic than just doing plain flat washes or gradations. So what you do, and again, don't scrub that paint. So do a stroke, come back, get a different color, do a stroke, come back, get a different color. Maybe go back to the original color. Rinse your brush out, go get, maybe I think I'll get a yellow here. So you can see that what you do is you just, every time you make a stroke, and this is really wonderful for doing backgrounds, mountains, things in the distance, or clothes. It's a wonderful abstract feeling of clothes. So again, I call that color changes. All right, pause the video and go try that. Wasn't that fun? All right, the next one is lost edges. And this is fun. So I just get a little bit of watercolor, a little bit of water, or paint. You can do it with anything. And then before it dries, you just get a lot of water and come up and touch the edges. Okay, or that's called drawing out color. So the water, the paint will go in the direction of the water, okay? Lost edges are where you'll like lose an edge like this up here, make it real soft, okay? And then this one here I want hard. So you get lost and found edges, which is a great painting technique, regardless of what medium you're in. Okay, now the next one we're going to do is drop in color. Okay, so I'm just going to use up some of this paint I have on my palette. Okay, then I'm going to go, and while it's good and wet, I'm going to go and just touch it with some color. And you can experiment with this. So you don't want to mix the color. You want to let it do itself. There's dark. You just, it depends on whatever you do. You can do that with any colors. You just have it wet, you drop it in, and the color kind of oozles around and does its own thing. You can tilt your board, you know, when you do it in a big area, and get it to do all kinds of cool things. And that's what I call letting the watercolor do the watercolor thing. Okay, the next thing I'm going to show you is oozles. Let's see. I'm going to do, I think I'll get some brown here. Maybe they'll show up better if I do it this way. Notice I'm doing color changes here as I go. I just almost cannot paint without doing some color changes. I had a really good girlfriend show me this years ago. Totally changed everything I do. Okay, so oozles are a lot like dropping in color, except that what you do is you just drop in pure water. Now, there's a timing thing going on here. So I'm going to kind of show you. So if you drop the water in right here where it's still wet, you'll see that not a whole lot happens. But if you just kind of wait a minute, and I can see it's sort of dry up here in this corner. So then I'm going to drop a little dab of water in that. Okay. Now that one's really turning out well. And it's a waiting game. And it's tricky because different parts, if you have a big area, different parts will dry faster than other parts. They don't dry evenly. But that's kind of the thing. The least you try to control watercolor, the better. All right, I'm going to clean up that brown. And the next one I'm going to show you is salt. So hopefully you've gotten all your supplies close. If not, pause the video, go get some salt. And I think in the last video there was one thing I wanted you to get that I forgot about, and that is a piece of bubble wrap. So if you can pause the video, one of the times when you stop it, go run and find some bubble wrap. And if you don't have any, just next time you get it, save some. Okay, so the next thing is salt. And everybody, when they first learn this, they just think it's so exciting. So I always have in my drawer here a little bucket of salt. And this is margarita salt. It's kind of got a little bit bigger granules than regular salt. So you just go, and again, you have the issue of some places it works better than others, depending on how wet it is. And sometimes you just hit it just right. You can see that now the salt is absorbing the paint in these little droplets. And this is really great for making like snow scenes or just adding texture to things. It's an easy thing to do, and it's fun. You can't control it just right, but it works quite well. So go ahead and try that. Okay, the next one I'm going to do is called lifting. Okay, and here, certain colors work better with lifting. If you get them while they're wet, while the paint is wet, a little bit wet, it works better. But with opaque colors, you can lift up pretty well afterwards, but transparent colors get a little bit difficult. So this is called lifting, and I use this technique a lot. I just take a thirsty brush, and I go through, and I lift up some paint, okay? And again, you can do this depending on the paint, sometimes when it's totally dry and other times when it's just not. So that was pretty wet. So let me hit it with the hairdryer and you can see what happens when it's dry and I Okay. And you just take a paper towel and go and look at that. And you can sometimes use, I'm going to use a little piece of this stencil right here. This is kind of fun. We'll see if I can get it to work. Get this dry. You don't want it too wet because it won't work. There. Isn't that fun? Okay, that's called lifting. Now, the next thing is called scraping. And scraping is just a real fun, wonderful thing I use for a lot. So, say I'm doing somebody's hair, you know, I'll just scrape out a few pieces of hair. And then it just says, make this outside edges soft. And then it says hair. So, I showed you in the earlier video, some paintbrushes have these beveled edges, okay? And those are made for scraping. But you can scrape with anything. You can scrape with a stick. I like this little watercolor, or this little pocket knife that I got in a workshop with Steve Griggs. You might look up his stuff sometime. He's really quite a master. And then I keep a bigger pocket knife around. And I don't know, you'll get things that are your favorites. So say I've just done a dark night background or something. I'm just going to scratch out a couple of trees or something. Okay, that was with the brush, and they're kind of thick. And now with this, you can get real thin little strokes. See? Isn't that fun? All right, that's called scraping. And then the next thing I want to show you is if you got a bottle of Pebeo drawing gum. Winsor Newton has a brand of this, but I don't like it so well. I like this one. It's gray. You can see it. And it picks up pretty easily and does not tear the paper. So when I use that, I get an inexpensive brush that, and I keep usually a lot of the same brushes. And you always want to get a little soap. Okay, so say you're doing a field in the distance of flowers, it's nice to use a little Pebeo just to make some texture out there and keep your whites, and then you can do a big wash and scraping and all kinds of things for all the leaves and sticks. Then you pull up the Pebeo, and then you can go back in and paint the flowers. So here's some flower. Might as well paint some flower shapes, I guess, huh? Let's paint a big one. Now, one of the things I like to do is I don't like everything to be the same size. I like mama bear, papa bear, and baby bear shapes, meaning big shapes, little shapes, and medium-sized shapes. And that's a design concept, and that makes our work much more interesting. Okay, I'm gonna let that dry for a second. Okay, and then I'm gonna go on to the next one, which is called Wax Resist. Okay. And you just use a crayon or a piece of wax from a candle. And you can kind of carve this stuff too to get different shapes if you need to. But I'm just going to do a couple of shapes here so you can see what this does. And this you don't have to wait on. And we'll do this while we're waiting for the Pebeo to dry. Okay? So, let's see, where is this? Here it is. Okay. So just right over the top. And the wax resists because it's kind of oily, right? Water and oil don't mix. We're having a pretty warm day today here, finally. I think that's dry enough. I'm going to use some cobalt blue this time. See, I don't know if you can tell the difference in those colors on the video, but okay. I'm going to let that dry. Okay. Now the next thing we're going to do, this is where fun starts to really happen, is, let me put that there for a second. I always keep in my studio a little bit of saran wrap, okay? Get that there handy, ready to go. Get my paintbrush, and I'm going to do some color changes, okay? I'm going to tear this down smaller so it doesn't take up too much room. Okay, so then what you do is you just put it down on the watercolor and let it kind of crinkle up, and then just leave it until it dries. You can pick it up earlier, but it's better if you leave it till it dries. Okay, now the next one, this is a pretty new thing. I told you to see if you had any bubble wrap laying around. And this is, so this concept here is you stamp into the paint, okay? And you get different things when you stamp into the paint. So this is bubble wrap. There you go, and you just push it down. And you can leave that till it dries too, or you can pull it up right away. And look at that, isn't that fun? And then you can also take it and, I'll show you here, just put it around in your palette till you get some color on it. And then come over here and stamp with it. Ta-da! I've had more fun with bubble wrap this last year. So you go ahead and pause the video and try that one out, okay? All right, the next thing we're gonna do is wax paper. By the way, you can crinkle wax paper on there. You can crinkle all kinds of things, and just practice with whatever you find. You may discover something really cool, and if you do, let me know. So, wax paper, I'm going to crunch up, okay? And let's see, I think I can get this down here a little ways. Let's see. I think you can see that on there. Right? Yes. Okay. So I'm going to get a couple colors because I like color changes so much. You're going to hear me say that like my whole life, okay? And then I'm going to get some yellow. You know, I like to mix greens. Blue and yellow make a nice green. So here's, watch this. This is pretty cool. So you go over here and you use this like a palette, and you go and you stomp on it. Get some more. You can go right in the paint, okay? And then you come over, and I like to, whenever I'm doing something like this, I like to move around so I don't get the same shapes, okay? Then here I'm going to get some blue. There you go. That's wax paper. And that is great for, like, say you want to make some bushes in a background or something, and make just wonderful texture. All right, and then I told you about sponges. So I keep an array of sponges around. I never know when I'm going to get into my sponges. And these are natural sponges available at Michael's or your crafts store, and they come in different sizes and different textures. Like, obviously, that texture is totally different from that one. And these, again, too, you come and get your paint on your palette. Okay, get a lot of paint. Okay, I'm going to show you, I don't know which one, I guess I'll use this one. So you get the sponge wet first, and then you wring it out, and then you come over and get your color. You can also clean out your palette with it while you're at it. So then I'm going to do this, then I'm going to go get a medium green. I'm going to go there, and then I'm going to get this dark, and I'm going to go down here underneath. Okay? Now, I rinse out my thing, and I'm going to take a little round brush, and I'm just going to take some of that color and go down like this. And then like that. And ta-da, I have a little tree. And trees, generally they're light on top, they've got a mid-tone value, and they're dark underneath. So there you go. There's a cute little tree. You make little great gift cards and stuff with that. Okay, so moving along, I like to do, there's another thing that's kind of fun called stamping. I guess it's called stamping. I don't know what else it'd be called. But sometimes when I do things, paint things, and I get a little more abstract or just want something different in the background, I got all these stamps at the thrift shop for like next to nothing. I don't know, it was a couple bucks for all of these. And they're made for ink. And you might even have some of these around if you have kids. And so I'm just going to do the horse. I'm going to move this palette up here a little bit. Well, maybe I can move it down where you can see what I'm doing on the palette. Just don't want the camera too far away because you can't see what's going on down here. Okay, so I'm going to just color it like that, or if you have enough paint, you can go in here. And the thing about this is don't expect this to be perfect, okay? This is just for a little suggestion of something. So you come over here, and you put it down, press it, and gently take it up. And there you have a little impression of a horse, which is really fun. Okay? And, you know, I have all kinds of things, little fleur-de-lis and, you know, whatever came in here. If I'm doing a sea thing, I might just do something silly like, you know, put that in some bushes in the background, and somebody happens to discover it and thinks it's fun. So there's a lot you can do with that. Okay, now I want to show you how to paint with a palette knife. Okay, everybody thinks palette knife is just for oils, and I love palette knife. I do a lot of painting with palette knife. Okay, so I get a lot. You want to get a lot of paint. You want it kind of pasty. Remember, see how that's kind of pasty? All right. Now here's the palette knife. Okay, just go there and get some paint. Oh, by the way, let me pull this up. Get it out of the way. Look at that. Isn't that cool? What that does, that saran wrap. Okay, so here's a palette knife. And you can get scrapes and things going. If you want a real organic thing, look at how that kind of looks like a rock. Again, I like to do color changes. Starting to look like a little alien. Maybe he needs some eyes. There, I just made a little alien. Anyway, okay, so there's painting with palette knife. And then, this is something very useful. If you start doing landscapes and scenes, you know, you end up having to do rocks. And rocks will challenge people. I've got some good rock lessons, by the way, so if you stick around and watch some more videos, I'll post the videos. You know, sky, tree, rocks, water, stuff like that. And then you can kind of get them all together. Okay, so the next one is called credit card. So get an old credit card and cut it up, which is a very pleasing experience, by the way. And I have credit cards in different sizes here, depending on what I want to do, okay? I have some little skinny ones and big ones. I just like to keep them handy because you never know when the muse is going to hit. So this is a great way for doing bricks. Okay. There. That's a credit card. And I tell you, that would take you forever to try to paint that like that. Little trick here with credit card, and you've got it done. Oh, the other thing you can do with credit cards, since I've got them right here, is just like the palette knife. You can paint with them. Want some good texture somewhere? Just paint with them. Again, this is one of these things you can't control too much. And the more you control it, the worse it is. So if you don't control it, you get some cool stuff happening. Look at that. Oh, I didn't even know I could make check marks. How about that? I just learned something. Okay, that is credit cards. So go ahead and pause your video and try that. And the next one is splatter. So splatter makes a mess, and it depends on what you splatter with. I'll start by splattering with the toothbrush, okay? Because that's like the first thing I learned to splatter with. And then I learned that everything splatters differently, and it adds a lot of wonderful texture. So you go to your palette and you get lots of paint, okay? And you might want to cover up some of what else you're working on a little bit here, because this goes a long ways. All right, there you go. There's some splatter with a toothbrush. So save your old toothbrushes. Oh, and you can paint with toothbrushes too. Ta-da! It needs a color change. There. Okay. And then I often, at the end of a painting, and a lot of people do, almost everybody does this, is you take your brush and you get some of whatever color it is. Again, I'm going to cover up just a little bit of this so you can see it. And then you just hit your brush like this. Got to get enough paint and water for it to work. And I like this because instead of, you just get a bigger variety of splatters. And if you do it right, you can also make them go directional. See how they're kind of going, jutting out like that? Takes a little bit of practice, but you can do it. Okay, moving on. Another thing that we can do that is a lot of fun is stenciling. And I showed you how I picked up those things with that stencil. You can also paint with a stencil. But again, this is an acrylic. It's not spray paint. You got a stencil, so you want to have your paint fairly pasty. You don't want any watery, wimpy stuff. You want it nice and pasty. Okay, see how that's nice and pasty? And then you come in. I think that might be too watery, so I'm going to make it more pasty here for this one. And this is an old stencil. It's kind of popping up, so I don't know exactly how well this one's going to work. And just gently, and then pull it up, and there you go. And you can use this with this layering technique, so you have a different color background and you can layer like the yellow over it. So stenciling is fun, and I have a million stencils because I think they're a lot of fun. I use them in acrylic and in oil painting, watercolor, all kinds of things. Why limit yourself? Okay, and then the last technique that I want to show you is dry brush. Okay, and dry brush is simply where you take your brush and you get it pretty dry. You get most of the paint out of it, okay? And then you can come, let's get it darker. You lay the brush kind of flat. All right, that's dry brush. This is great for doing like streams where you want to sparkle in the stream. Okay, the other kind of dry brush is simply where you paint a shape dry, like that. You let it dry, and then you come back and you paint like another shape. Okay, and then you come back and another one. Well, I'm doing this too fast. You kind of let them dry in between. So that's dry brush. And you don't scrape or blend or anything. You just put down color, 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 as opposed to where you drop in color. So that concludes the techniques that I want to show you that we will be using in the next video, where we put all these together and you get to play with them all and make a wonderful painting. So again, this is Pixie Glore. Please hit the subscribe button below and you will see my upcoming videos. So take those, make sure you write down what they are so that you have them to refer to. And with that, you have a great rest of your day.